What up, y'all? Welcome to the channel. Make sure y'all subscribe, like, share. Go check out the Underground podcast. I'm making my own universe over here for non-weirdos. Follow Double M517. If you like these videos, you can donate to keep them going. I can do about 3 a week right now. Hit up the PayPal. Hit up the website, getupweebly.com. Or you can donate at Cashapp JediJackson. Had to get that out of the way, man. Thank you to the donators. Thank you to the people who donate $5, $10, $100, $500, $1,000. Right now we're going toward $1,000 goal for next month. So I just want to say I appreciate y'all. All right, let's get to it. So, also we gotta do a comment, man. Shout out to Dirty Asian Deluxe. Left a comment on the MGK Talks Reckless about Slipknot video. He said, bro, charge your cell. I told him, man, my bad. The struggle was real that day. He said, we all been there. Great video. Thank you, brother. Yeah, man, I was trying to get down here and just get the content out. I can do, like I said, I can do about 3 videos a week right now based on donations. That allows me to free up my time. The music is taking the majority of my time. Y'all want more videos? Go ahead and send those donos in, and I really appreciate y'all, man. So, Rory and Mal from the Joe Budden podcast have signed a $10 million deal with, I believe it was Stitcher. Very, very messy breakup for those of you who don't know. Joe Budden had a podcast, started out with a girl named Marissa and Rory. Mal joined. Parks, the engineer, got a mic, and they went on tour, and Joe industried them, essentially. That's when they take you out on tour, and suddenly what was supposed to be your profit gets eaten up with expenses, and it gets hard. They said it was hard to see, pause. Oh, man. It gets hard to see what's where the money's going, man. And, some people say with this Karen Civil situation, birds of a feather flock together. Regardless, Rory and Mal have reportedly signed a new deal with Stitcher, and they went over to Vulture to do an interview. So, I was scrolling and I saw this, and I had to click it. Let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. All right, so they did an intro. We're going to get straight to the interview. I'll admit to being a little confused over the dang it, we're going to leave it in there. Over the specifics of everything that happened earlier this year, as it felt like a few different narratives smashing together. I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, but I thought I heard Joe Budden had threatened to sue if the two of you started another podcast. I take it that's not the issue? Jamil Mal Clay. Sometimes I forget what his name is. Like his full name. I'm so used to just referring to him as Mal. Yeah, no, it's not an issue for us. That's something you would probably have to ask him, but it would be very funny. And a lot would be exposed if he decided to do that. So Mal starting right out of the gate, man. A lot would be exposed is a heavy statement, man. Rory said that's not a route he would want to go. I can assure you that. Got it. Let's start here. What's the backstory behind this deal with Stitcher? Rory says, Stitcher made the most sense out of the whole group. Outside of them, we met with almost everybody, and we met a lot of people that were just trying to get their footing in the podcast world, which wouldn't have been a great partnership. With a lot of other outlets, it felt like we were going to push them to the next level, not the other way around. With Stitcher, Mal said, the people there, Jasmine Henley Brown, More Sauce's executive producer, in particular, she was really passionate about the show and the things they had in mind. It just made sense with everything we're about. There were other offers with more money on the table, but they didn't align with what we were trying to do. We just didn't feel the same connection with those other people. What were your priorities in those conversations? Vulture asked. Rory said, we definitely wanted to add some new elements into podcasting. I feel like podcasting has become pretty stagnant and a little oversaturated, where everybody is just setting up microphones and talking about the same thing every single day. Academics. Oh, sorry. My bad. It's become like the new mixtape or the new merch line. It's just the shit everybody kept doing. Oh, maybe I shouldn't cuss. After everything happened with the Joe Budden podcast, Maul and I sat down and were like, yo, I think the only way we can continue doing this is if we can really do it in a unique way. So that was a big thing in these conversations. We wanted to add different sketch elements to it, different types of interviews, different types of people that would be on these podcasts. Our fan base really gravitated toward the sketch stuff and the other things we've been adding. There's live show stuff too. Though obviously with the elephant in the room being COVID, we're taking our time with what it's going to look like. We do have 2 shows in November in New York and LA, but as far as really bringing live shows together, that's going to come in 2022 when things are a little calmer. So they got live shows planned. Did you ever consider staying independent? Honestly, I was a little surprised to hear you were both going with another network after the whole thing with Spotify last year. For those of you who don't know, Joe signed a Spotify deal and the split with them was very ugly, as most Joe splits are. Pause again, if that applies. Rory said, definitely, just knowing the past experience that Mal and I have had in podcasting, being independent was obviously something that made the most sense. But there are always ways for corporations and creatives to work together. People have spent so much time making a status quo where the creative gets effed over. And there's just such easier ways for corporate and creatives to work together. Luckily, Stitcher is on the same page as us on that. It makes sense to have a machine behind you and still be able to own all your own stuff. We're not against being independent. Sure, we signed a deal, but again, it just made sense. They understand what we're trying to do and what we represent and how important it is for us. I think the whole world saw what Mal and I stood for and where our heads were as far as what we were going to tolerate and not tolerate. We weren't just going to do a deal just to do a deal. We publicly turned down more money than most podcasters have ever dreamed to see. So we're not doing something unless it's a deal that's fair. Now, that's a great point. As a creative myself on the journey, I've gotten into situations where people offer you deals and it sounds good, but the money just isn't exactly what you want. And starting out in a new space, it can be tempting to limit yourselves, but Rory and Mal are a perfect example of what happens when you know your worth as a creative. I heard this story once. This little boy went to his dad and was like, I want to make some money. His dad said, go out there, and they lived in a mineral-rich environment. And he said, go out there and dig in the ground and find a red stone. The little boy went out there, found a red stone, came back, and his father said, all right, go take it to the local souvenir stand and see what they say. Souvenir stand said, we'll give you $80 for it. He went back to his dad. His dad said, all right, now take it over to, the high-end stone analysis place. You know what I mean? Take it to the rock place. He went over there. They said, we'll give you $1,000 for it. His father said, all right, now go take it to the college up the street, to the archaeology teacher who personally enjoys these things. He went over there. That man happened to have a lot of money and said, I'll pay you $1 million for that. And the boy sold that red stone for $1 million. The stone is your intellectual property, y'all. That's the key, man. If someone doesn't value you, keep selling until you find a market that appreciates you. That's how you do it, man. That's how I made salute to Nipsey Hussle. That's how I made $100 selling free projects. It's totally possible, and Rory and Mal have capitalized on that method. We're leaving all the mistakes in, man. Just to confirm, both of you continue to own the show? Mal said, oh, absolutely. Rory said, we have 100% ownership of the show. Was a deal with Spotify ever on the table? Rory said, I mean, we spoke with Spotify. It wasn't a bad conversation by any means. It just didn't make any sense for us. Wow, so that means even with the Joe situation, they didn't sour the deal. In one of the first new Rory and Mal episodes, one thing you mentioned was that you were hoping to do things that you weren't able to do with your old show. Could you talk more about that? Mal, there were a lot of things we wanted to do in the old show that we weren't able to because we just didn't have as much control after a while. Looking back, that was the beginning of the end. Honestly, it all started when every time we wanted to try something, the energy around it would just be like, I don't know. Despite the fact that this is our show, you know what I mean? And then there were a lot of business meetings that were happening that we didn't know about. Coming out of all that was a blessing because now it's literally just Rory and myself having conversations about what we creatively want to do. Stuff that before would not have seen the light of day because the energy around it was just, I don't know. Let's think about that. Let's come back to that. It was never, yes, let's do, let's try. With Rory and myself, it can happen so freely now. Now pay attention, man. These are I have to point out to the young creators out there, man, these are people making $10 million having conversations in podcast form. There's a gold rush right now. Go for it. Salute to the underground. I don't think we're going to read this whole thing. If you want to check out the whole article, you can go to Vulture. They're definitely sending some shots to Joe, but I think rightfully so. I think that for the rest of the year and the next year, this is going to be the season of exposing the weirdos, the snakes who try to steal money. And look, I still watch the Joe Budden podcast. I personally think it's a little bit better with Ice and Ish on there. I think it's actually a little bit better. And it looks like the Patreon stuff is working out for Joe. But this is dope. This to me is validation, you know. As someone who's had to deal with a lot of weirdos in this industry, with a lot of having to stand on my own too, having to find people who really support, I appreciate seeing someone who didn't take the absolute low road like they could have. They didn't go the act route and just slander. They stood their ground, spoke up for what was right, moved on, and it looks like the universe and God is rewarding them with a bigger deal than a lot of the people who are hating on them. You know, I pray that happens for them, for more creators, and for all of us creating too. Salute. We'll spin back with more videos, man. We'll be back.